This is the Wales Synod Roadshow. Initially we were going to call it Cutting Our Cloth, but we thought tying in with the previous Synod meeting's theme, a more appropriate title would be Belonging Together. We're going to look at several issues that are finance related, and each of the sections will be broken with a photograph. Looking at the cost of ministry, we looked at the number of congregations in the Wales Synod and the number of active ministers in pastoral charge. The ministers in pastoral charge have a total stipendiary cost of £1 million. Our churches pay £600,000 towards the cost of ministry. A minister's stipend is £22,000. When you add in ministry-related costs, national insurance, pension, etc., the true cost is £32,000. If you add in training costs, that then increases to £42,000. And don't forget, ministry is a very broad term. Over half of our churches are in LEPs. These ecumenical partnerships might have a different denomination providing ministry. That complicates how those pastorates pay towards ministry and mission. And we need to say thank you to the churches that have faithfully provided towards the M&M Fund. This is a photograph of the Synod office in case you've never seen it. To have the Synod office, well, more really, to have the work of the people, the staff and the officers of the Synod in Wales costs £300,000 per year. So we've got 2 half-time training officers, a full-time rural officer, a full-time children and youth development officer, a half-time Synod clerk, a full-time property officer, a full-time PA/finance secretary, and 2 part-time admin support officers. We also have a vacancy for the full-time ecumenical officer post. I'm showing you some of the officers here. You might know Kevin and David. They cover the whole of the Wales Synod between them. And when I asked them what did they do, they gave me 3 sheets of A4. And I've kind of cut it down here a bit, but it shows some of the range of activities that these officers carry out. Chris Coe lives in Mid Wales. It's a good place, a good base to deal with things like the Royal Welsh Agricultural Show. And Chris has also said some of the other things that he's actively involved in. Judy Harris is based in Port Talbot, but covers the entire Synod. If she hasn't been to your church, she'd love to hear from you. And I was a bit flippant, what doesn't Sheila do? She described it as being a church secretary in a synod role. So administering meetings and making sure resolutions are formally recorded and tying everything up together with a big bow. Suzanne Cole is our longest serving member of staff or officer in the Synod, and you've probably been in touch with her at some point because she handles all the property transactions within the Synod. And this is me. So I'm the moderator's PA. I do a lot of diary management for the moderator, the office manager, financial secretary, and a couple of other things besides. If you ring the Synod office, you'll quite likely speak first with Gaynor Morgan. Gaynor and Andy both work 3 days a week at the Synod office. And Andy is our minute secretary at nearly all of the meetings in the Synod. Chris Atherton is the only volunteer currently serving the Synod in a regular capacity. And the moderator, he doesn't cost the Synod anything because moderators' costs are picked up from the General Assembly budget. I suppose that makes him a bargain. So £300,000 per year to do the work of the staff and the officers. And we don't have a special fund to cover our costs. So the money is currently coming from reserves. Some synods have a levy. Wales Synod used to have a levy as part of the M&M donations that the churches made centrally. Some of that used to come back to the Synod, but that was stopped a couple of years ago in the hope of having a more transparent way of paying into the M&M fund. The Mission Development Fund was created 5 years ago using the net sale proceeds from closed church buildings. It was hoped that when a redundant church building was sold, the sale proceeds would go into a pot. Then continuing churches would have 3 years to assess how much they would require from that fund and draw down on it. The remainder, so churches that are closed and dispersed, would then be available for the wider Synod to apply for mission grants. In reality, what's happened is it's only redundant churches where the congregations have closed and dispersed that have donated monies into this fund. The Mission Development Fund affects the Synod income. We go to the Inter-Synod Resource Sharing meeting and they consider the Wales Synod awarding grants of perhaps £100,000 or £200,000 per annum affects the way that we ask them to support the work of the Synod. If we're asking for other synods, English synods, to help Wales in its work, they are rightly questioning why we are at the same time giving hundreds of £1,000s in mission grants. The Inter-Synod Resource Sharing process has run for 11 years. The Wales Synod has always been a beneficiary of the scheme. We have received between £50,000 and £200,000 per annum. I remember it being created, and the first call on it for the Wales Synod was to appoint a rural officer post. It was created from that grant. However, and this does happen because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to do some of the work in the Synod that other synods were able to do, and we weren't able because of financial constraints. So some of the officers and staff posts that have been created have been a result of the inter-synod resource sharing process, but now we're depending on the inter-synod resource sharing process to cover the costs of key duties. The inter-synod resource sharing process itself is vulnerable. It was set up to support mission projects, and the English synods are now struggling to contribute to their inter-synod resource sharing pot. That's partly due to the recession and low interest rates, and synods are being asked to find money for other mission projects such as the Retired Ministers' Pension Fund, Retired Ministers' Housing and the Westminster College Appeal. If inter-synod resource sharing falters, what will we need to do in Wales? If our current operating costs are £300,000 per annum, we've only got enough money in reserve for another 3 years. I mentioned before that some synods ask their local churches to give to a levy or have a one-off collection, perhaps at the Synod Day meeting, and that would translate for every person attending church in Wales £50 per annum to support the work of the Synod. That's in addition to your manse costs, your ministry costs, your lay preaching costs. So we're asking you to have a think. We could stop doing some things, but what? And what things do you really appreciate us providing for you? The Retired Ministers' Pension Fund had a deficit. A couple of years ago, it was taken to the Mission Council meeting that the United Reformed Church needed the synods each to support the Retired Ministers' Pension Fund. It was agreed that we would pay £21,000 from the synod reserves, and that the local churches and the synod boards and committees would be challenged to consider how we would meet the further 84,000. We haven't had a response on that, and so at our November 2011 meeting it was agreed that we would take a further £42,000 to meet the 2011 pledge. We're really asking for your ideas. Please do get in touch with either the Synod Clerk, Reverend Sheila Pollard, or myself, Helen Stenson, at the Synod Office. Our number is 02920 195729.